Okay, so good morning to everyone. So let's have our quick daily briefing for today. And as we all know, the NFP data was released last Friday. So it's been a blockbuster and it created a significant move last Friday. So let's have a look. So last Friday, the non-farm payrolls for the month of July. So the previous data was 938K and forecasted at 870K. And for the actual data, it beats the market expectations at 943K. And meanwhile, we also have the unemployment rate for US for the month of July. So the previous data was 5.9% and forecasted at 5.7%. And for the actual data, it beats the market estimated data as well at 5.4%. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate for Canada, so the previous data was 7.8% and forecasted at 7.4%. And for the actual data, it was 7.5%. So let's take a look on what happened to some charts right after the NFP data. So first things, we have the dollar index on the 1 hour time frame. So right after the NFP data, as you can see here, it made a significant move from 92.37 territory all the way to 92.77. So it made an increase above the 44 pips right after the data. And right here, the dollar yen benefited from the data as well. So it made an increase above the 110.34, so above 56 pips. But for the euro dollar, right here, the pair declined all the way to 1.7530 level. So all the way down to 64 pips. And the pound against the dollar declined as well, all the way to 1.3862. So 53 pips. And last thing, we have the gold. So obviously gold was affected right after the NFP data. So as you can see here, from 1800 territory goes down all the way to 67 or 1681 level. So it breaks its previous low last month right here. But as you can see here on the Asian session, so at this moment, the gold is rebounding all the way to 1737.57. So for today's economic data during the European session, at 1:45 p.m. we have an employment rate for Switzerland, a monthly basis for the month of June. And also we have the trade balance for Eurozone later at 2 p.m. for the month of June as well. And just to share some US and European shares for this week. So first things, we have eBay this Wednesday, August 11, and Thursday we have Walt Disney and Baidu. So it will be released for this week. And eBay right here, last outing they have 3.02 billion compared on the 2.97 billion for the revenue, and the EPS or the earnings per share was 1.09 versus the 1.08. But right here, as you can see, their EPS for this week is forecasted at 0.95, which is lower comparing on the previous one, and also their revenue at 3 billion. So based on the analysis, the eBay is expected to have 0.95 on its revenue. So overall, if the EPS was 0.95 for this week, we expect that the stock will go on the downside. So if the EPS overall is 0.95, it will mark for about 12% decline compared to the same quarter last year. If we are going to base on the statistics, last third quarter last year, they've also had 0.95 earnings per share. And if we're going to take a look on the chart on the daily time frame, we have a good trend line right here around the 60 level. But for the range, as you can see here, the eBay is declining towards the 65.96 level. But overall, this is the possible range for gold on the daily time frame. So we have 65.96 and 64.62, and for the resistance, 68.26 and 69.22. Next thing is Disney. So last May 13, they have 15.61 billion versus the 15.86, which is slightly lower. But the EPS was up for 0.79 versus the 0.26. But for Thursday, August 12, the EPS, or the revenue rather, is expected to have 6.76 billion compared to the revenue last May 13, and the EPS at 0.54. So overall, the Disney is focusing more on the streaming opportunity due to the virus. Still, a lot of people are still cautious on going outside. And right here on the 4 hour time frame, we have a good trend right here around the 1.80 to 0.50 and on the downside at 170. But during the Asian session, the Disney is on the upside around the 177.17 per share. But for today's range or the weekly range, support is 173.63 and 171.24, and resistance 179.94 and 183.78. And last thing is Baidu, one of the Chinese leading company when it comes to hello, sorry about that. So next thing is Baidu. The last revenue they have 28.13 billion comparing on the 27.36, and the EPS 12.38 and 10.63. But on August 12, their revenue is forecasted at 3.99 billion, which is higher comparing on the previous one, and the EPS at 13.18, so higher than the previous one as well. But for the EPS for Baidu, it's expected to have an increase of $1.93 for the EPS for this week, which represents the yearly basis decline for about 7% from 2.08 per share last quarter. And if you're going to take a look on the chart of Baidu on the 15 minutes time frame, so upon checking, there's no strong trend line on the 1 hour or all the way to daily time frame, but on 15-minute time frame, we can see here on the 166 level, there's a strong trend line right here. But for this week's range, we can look for 163.72 and 161.58, and resistance at 167.08 and 168.29 respectively. Again, for the European session, 145, we have an employment rate for Switzerland, monthly basis for the month of June, and trade balance for Eurozone at 2 p.m. for the month of June as well. But for this week, there's nothing much compared on the last week, so it's quite less noise for the market. But overall, we have to focus on the earnings calendar for this week since we have that instrument on our MT4. All right, so thank you everyone for joining our daily briefing for today. Please stay safe and have a great day.